Welcome to Geek Gab on the Books. I'm Brian Niemeier, brianniemeier.com. And with me today is a very special returning guest, superhero author Lucas Flint. And today we have a very special topic for you, which is something that our guest has researched. And with me today, Lucas, how are you?
Pretty good. How are you? Thanks for having me on.
You're welcome. Thanks for coming. Like I said, we have a topic today that you've researched, and you didn't really find that anyone else had spoken about this, at least in print. And what is a topic that you brought to me today?
I want to talk about how to make the jump from writing fan fiction as a hobby to becoming a professional fiction writer.
And you yourself have made that jump, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
All right, well, why don't you tell our listeners a little bit about what you did as a fanfic writer and how you made that transition to going pro?
Okay, so I started writing fan fiction back in 2006, I believe, or late 2005. That's when I first, got started writing, and that's how I first found out that I liked writing so much I wanted to be a writer. So for the next decade or so, I just wrote fan fiction and posted it online and got feedback from readers and stuff like that. All the usual fanfic stuff. Um, but on the side, I would try my hand at original novels and short stories. Um, Though I didn't really focus on it too much because I found fan fiction easier to write. But eventually, around 2003, I decided I wanted to make a go pro, so um, I came up with an original novel idea and wrote it and put it on Amazon. Published it on Amazon in 2014, and I've been writing uh, original fic ever since.
Outstanding. Now, for those in our audience today who might not be familiar with the term fan fiction, would you be able to give us a definition of what fan fiction is?
Sure. Fan fiction is basically writing um, unofficial fiction around an already existing franchise or property. Like you could write a story set like a Star Wars story about Luke and Han Solo. I don't know, fighting the Empire at some point. That isn't necessarily canon, but is your own uh, your own spin on Star Wars or whatever. Um, so you don't get paid for it, and it's perfectly legal, of course, but you can't get paid for it unless I guess you can unless you're convince the license holders to take it, make your fan fiction official.
Right, and is that what you mostly wrote? Was it Star Wars fanfic, or was there another
Not just an
property?
example. I actually wrote fan fiction based off Bionicle, was an old Lego toy line from uh, the first from started in 2001 and ended in 2010. That was what originally caught my interest. There were the books and tie-in comic books written based off it, and I just started writing my own Bionicle stories. It got I wrote a lot in that particular universe.
Yeah, I do remember that line. It was pretty cool.
Yeah.
So it just goes to show folks that you can write a story about anything. I believe Jim Butcher has said that he once challenged a panel audience at a con to give him the two worst ideas they could. Not to say that Bionicle's a bad idea for a story, but he maintained that a good writer could write a good story about anything. And the two ideas that the audience gave him were the Lost Roman Legion and Pokemon. And he took that and made Codex Alera. So
Yeah, I
proved his
remember.
point.
I heard about that too.
I think I've discussed it on the show before. Now, you mentioned that when you're writing fanfic, you are taking another license holder's IPs and characters, and you're writing your own story with it. For anyone who wants to get started in fanfic, is there any etiquette or webetiquette, I suppose, or I know you're not a lawyer and wouldn't presume to give legal advice, but anything that you would recommend for aspiring fanfic writers to do, any steps to take to avoid potentially, getting a cease and desist or getting some kind of legal trouble?
Um, I know some fanfic writers will put disclaimers at the beginning of stories, like I did not create these characters or this world or whatever. And I know there's some people who don't want fanfiction written about their worlds at all, not even just like a hobby or just for fun. So if someone doesn't want fanfiction written about their stuff, then you should respect that, and or at least yeah, just respect their wishes and not write or publish any fan fiction but using their stuff. But it's perfectly legal, I think, but you just can't make money off it. Then um, then you get into big trouble.
Yeah, absolutely. So there you go, folks. Geek Gab.
Well,
Geek Gab on the
actually,
books do not recommend any illegal activity. Go ahead.
I was gonna say there's actually there Kindle Worlds. I don't know if you've heard of that program that Amazon has, where you can write publish fan fiction. A certain number of licensed worlds, like GI Joe, where you can make money. You can make money off that fan fiction. But that's a different situation from what most fanfic writers do.
Right. Well, where do most fanfic writers publish their fanfic?
There's a lot of places. It's been a while since I've published fan fiction, so I don't know if there's anything new. But I know that there's a place called fanfiction.net, which is or maybe was, I don't know if it still is, but was like the biggest fan fiction site uh, on the web. But I also know that plenty of people post fan fiction on places devoted to particular franchises, like a Star Wars fan might post a Star Wars fan fiction on a Star Wars forum, or in my case, I posted my fanfic on a Bionicle fan site. Um, and I bet you could find it on social media or in places like Wattpad maybe, but I don't know for sure how fanfic writers use social media to distribute their works, or if they do at all. Because I sort of stopped writing fan fiction by the time social media was, took off.
Okay. And so fanfic writers, like to your knowledge, aren't really publishing, say, on Amazon, but making the books free. Because I believe that might set you up for some potential trouble if you did that.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone's doing that, but I wouldn't recommend it for just because it's a little too close to actually selling books. Except if you do it with Kindle Worlds, in that case it's okay. But otherwise, I wouldn't do it myself because too much potential legal trouble there.
Yeah, the only exception would be properties have gone into the public domain, like the Lovecraft mythos.
Oh yeah, sure, yeah. The public domain fan fiction is perfectly fine. Don't worry about that.
Hey, good to know. Now, do you have any tips for fanfic writers who want to make the jump and go pro? Are there any different habits or different mindset, a different approach between fanfic and writing professionally?
Um, yeah, the biggest problem I had when jumping from fan fiction to profic was creating my own stuff. It's like I knew how to make stories and ideas and characters that fit in the Bionicle universe, for example, but coming up with my own original characters and world and stuff was hard. So what I found helped was that I would take these ideas or these characters or whatever, and then just take out the Bionicle parts and replace them with my own original stuff. Or I take character names, apply them to new characters. In fact, my first novel I ever published, as a self-publisher, was actually it took a part from one of my fanfics and turned it and basically expanded it into the entire plot. So I did that. That was really helpful. Like, so don't be afraid to. So you can't publish your fanfic as they are, but you can take some of the ideas from your fanfics and change them around to get rid of the elements you don't own and turn that into original stuff. But nowadays, it's easier for me to come up with original plots since I've written so many books.
Yeah, exactly. Practice makes perfect. And of course, the most famous example of what you're talking about is someone taking an original property and just kind of doing a palette swap to get around any potential legal snags, and then hitting it big is 50 Shades of Grey, which started as Twilight fanfic.
Yeah, 50 Shades of Grey is it's a good example of that. Or it's most famous.
Yeah, exactly. It's like Bradford Walker in the chat got to that. Thought of 50 Shades at the same time I did.
Yep. I was thinking about it too.
Okay, so did you find the transition to going from a hobbyist to a pro to be difficult? I know you said it took some work, but did you really have to just discipline yourself and buckle down or adhere to a schedule? Like what habits did you develop?
Well, even before I went professional, I was always very disciplined in my writing because I always wanted to be a professional writer. So even before, even years and years before I first indie published, I was already writing like an hour a day and editing my work and publishing them on a regular schedule. So that helped. But I think the biggest difference between fan fiction and pro fiction writing is that fanfic writers, as a rule, they tend to do it for fun. They have no, like they tend to um, just do it just because they enjoy it or they do it on their off time. It's just a hobby. But for professional writers, we have to pay attention to the market to some degree and do marketing and learn about copyright and all these other and basic business stuff, and so on and so forth. But I will say that indie publishing actually, like indie publishing and fan fiction are very similar in the sense that you're the one who's in charge of putting out your work and you have a closer connection to your readers. So I think that, and there's still definitely challenges to be made in jumping from fan fiction to indie publishing, but um, but it wasn't. I think it would have been harder if I tried to go the traditional route because traditional publishing is a completely different beast from fan fiction, and yeah, it's just the mindset is a pretty big difference.
Okay. Yeah, you'll find in some quarters that the term amateur is thrown around like an epithet, and I I totally disagree with that mindset because an amateur is just someone who loves something, who's passionate about it, and that's the stuff that pros are made of. It's that passion plus discipline plus being market facing that in my experience is what allows you to make that jump to a professional career. Would you agree?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, to be a writer, you really have to be willing to work for it because it's a very difficult thing to do. At least it's difficult to make a real living at it. I mean, it's easier than ever with indie publishing, but even indie publishing, you still have to do a lot of work. So if you love it, then it's easier to handle the various ups and downs of the business. I agree.
All right, excellent. Well, we are coming up on the end of the show already. Time flies. Did you have anything else that you wanted to mention to our audience?
Um, I guess I wanted to say that I found that fan fiction can be good practice for original fiction writing, but um, there's also like I think there's some bad habits in the fan fiction community. Like a tendency to not finish stories or to just write little short stories or flash fiction, but never actually tackle novels. So that's so there are certainly habits you have to get over if you want to make the jump from fanfic to professional fiction. So
Do you have any
I
projects you're,
huh?
do you have any projects you're working on right now that you'd like our audience to know about?
I'm currently working on the new superhero series coming out, and probably gonna come out in early 2018. Um, called The Supervillains Kids. It's about these two young superpowered teenagers who were attending a superhero school, but their mom was a supervillain. So they're attending the school, but she was arrested. Now they're attending the school in order to learn how to become superheroes, not follow in their mom's steps.
All right, excellent. And a reminder, folks, you can find links to Lucas Flint's stuff, to his writing, his blog, his Amazon page in the show notes below. You can also find a link to Geek Gab Prime, our regular Saturday show with my inimitable co-hosts Daddy Warpig and Dornall. You can also find links to my blog, brianniemeier.com, and also to my award-winning Soul Cycle and my standalone novella, Hymn of the Pearl, which also, if you go to my blog, is currently free to new newsletter subscribers. Now, by the way, is an excellent time to get started on the Soul Cycle if you haven't read it yet, because you should have just enough time to read an Ethereal Soul Dancer and the Secret Kings before the final book, The Ophian Rising, comes out later this fall. Well, thanks for joining us. This has been Season 1 of Geek Gab on the Books. We will see you sometime after the first of the year for Season 2. And until then, remember to keep reading.